we're going live, preparing live stream. Very good. While that's happening, let me share my screen. Cool. All right. All right. Let me just check that this is working. That's on mute. That's fine. Cool. I'm on YouTube. That's scary. Right. All right. Cool. Let's get started. So yesterday in the mini mock test, I gave you a pretty hard write essay prompt. And a lot of people said, Jay, how can I generate ideas for my essay? Which is a good question, and it's a difficult question. It's a complex thing, and I'm going to teach you how to do that today. But yes, that's what I'm going to teach you how to do. I'm going to teach you how to prepare to write the essay. So let's just think about time management for write essay. So the essay goes for 20 minutes, right? So you should spend 18 minutes writing, and you should have 1 minute to check your writing at the end for spelling and grammar and punctuation. But you should also spend 1 minute. That's all you need. You just need 1 minute to prepare. It's really important to just think. You can write something down if you want, but even if you just prepare in your mind by just looking at the question prompt and understanding it. If you begin to write without preparing or without thinking of the question prompt, without having an idea of what you're going to write, you go in all sorts of directions. And I saw that yesterday with the difficult question prompt that I gave you. I saw people writing in various directions, not writing about the question prompt, writing about something else. Why? Because they didn't spend 1 minute thinking about the question prompt and thinking, what does this mean? What's my opinion? Etc. So let's have a look. So this is what we're going to look at. We're going to look at preparing for that in that 1 minute. So for PTE Write Essay, it's an argumentative essay that will have two sides, okay? Every single question prompt that I've ever seen is an argumentative essay, except one. There is one that's different, but forget about that for today. Let's think about the 99%. They're argumentative essays, which means the question themselves will give you two sides. There will be two sides to the argument. Think about it like a boxing match. There'll be a red side and a blue side. Now, you have three possible ways of answering the question. You can completely agree, in which case in your introduction you will say that you agree, in your paragraphs you will agree, and in your conclusion you will agree. Or you can disagree with the question prompt, in which case in the introduction you will disagree, in your paragraphs you will disagree, and in your conclusion you will disagree. Those two are the easiest ways to write this essay because they're just straightforward. You just go, you know what? I just disagree with this. Disagree, 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 disagree. Fine. Or you say, you know what? I agree with this. Agree, 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 agree. That's the easiest thing for you to do. There is a third way where you can sort of partially agree, partially disagree. In which case you would say, you know what? I do agree with red, but blue's also got some good reasons. But if you agree and disagree, in your conclusion, you must come to a conclusion and say, you know what, overall, red wins. Despite some good arguments from blue, red still wins. So let's think about how to disagree and agree with the question prompt. There are 4 questions you need to ask yourself in the 1 minute preparation time. The first question that you need to ask yourself when you're looking at the question prompt is, what are the two sides of the argument? What are the two sides? If you can't distinguish those two sides of the argument, you're in trouble because you won't know what you're agreeing with or what you're disagreeing with. So the first step is to look at that question prompt and go, okay, there's that side of the argument. There's the other side of the argument. That's the first step. Second step is then to go, okay, well, which side do I agree with? And you should choose a side, agree or disagree. Then simply you just need to come up with 2 reasons why you agree or 2 reasons why you disagree. That's it. There's basically 3 things that you need to think of in Write Essay. You need to think of, okay, which side am I on? What's my overall opinion? Why and why? That's it. That's what you need to do in the 1 minute. Let's look at an example and apply this method to an example. So let me disappear. I'll read you this question prompt. It says, smoking causes cancer. Cigarette companies want to reduce the age from which people can smoke to 12 years old. Governments believe that only adults should be allowed to smoke. Choose which position you most agree with and discuss why you chose that position. Okay, so first of all, question 1, what are the 2 sides of the argument? Just type into the chat, what are the 2 sides? Who are the opponents? Who's red and blue here? Who's red and blue? Yes, good Arthur. Yes, good Vijay. Yes, good Tina Venkat. Okay, sweet. Good. So you've seen the 2 sides of the argument. Excellent. Yes, yes, yes. Good, 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 good. Fine. Right. Okay, so what are the 2 sides of the argument? Well, we know that we've got cigarette companies in the red corner and we've got governments in the blue corner. Why? Because they have opposing views. You can see that the cigarette companies want to reduce the age and governments believe that only adults should be allowed to smoke. So they're the 2 arguments, right? We found them. That's good. Now, which side are you on? Type into the chat. Which side are you on? Cigarette companies or governments? Good. I see it doesn't matter which side you're on, whether you choose cigarette companies or not. Maybe you have a good argument why 12-year-old children can smoke cigarettes. That's fine. But what you need to think of is, what's the easiest thing for me to argue? What's going to be easy for me to argue? Right? Yes, unless you're addicted to smoking, that's correct. So yeah, fine. For me, I'm going to disagree with cigarette companies and I'm going to agree with governments. Okay? So what I've done in 20 seconds is this. I've looked at that question prompt. I've found the 2 sides, governments, cigarette companies. And then I've thought, well, which one do I agree with? I agree with governments. I disagree with cigarette companies. Fine. So in 20 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever, I've all of a sudden, I have a path for my essay. Okay? I can see my conclusion. I can see where I'm going. It's very important to know where you're going. If you know where you're going, your writing will follow your thoughts. Okay? If you don't know where you're going, you're just going to type and it's not going to be good, right? So I'm going to disagree with cigarette companies. I'm going to agree with governments. Now I need to go, okay, well, why do I agree with governments? So come up with 1 reason why only adults should be allowed to smoke, why kids should not be allowed to smoke. Just type in 1 or 2 words. Health, good. Health issues, age, health, great, fine. Addiction, that's a good one, Maya, fine. Addiction, informed decision making, excellent, yes. Good, fine. There's your paragraph 1. You've got paragraph 1, cool. So what did I say? I said, bad for growing bodies, bad for health. It's the first thing that came to my mind. It's easy to write about, fine. But now I need my paragraph 2. So I want you to come up with another reason besides health why only adults should be allowed to smoke, why kids should not be allowed to smoke. Arthur says addiction, good. Bharat says no logical reasoning to quit, good. Ridderful says crime, good, that's fine. You could probably argue that. Tanya says it's a better society, fine, you could argue that. Garner says adults are mature, kids are immature, good. Sheila says religious beliefs. Fine, you can probably argue something about that. Tarandeep says it's a waste of money for kids. That's a good one. Excellent. Cool. Excellent. Done. Done. In 1 minute, you have basically, you have your conclusion written because you know where you're going and you also know what your 2 paragraphs are going to be about. Excellent. So for me, my second paragraph will be about uninformed choices. I'm going to talk about how children can't make good decisions because they're not very well educated and they're immature and prone to peer pressure, something like that. So that's easy for me to write a paragraph. So my introduction will be that I'm going to say that governments are right. I agree with governments because cigarettes are bad for kids' health and kids can't make good choices. And in my conclusion, I'm going to say, yes, that's why I support governments. I've written my essay, or at least I've written the plan for my essay in my head in 1 minute. Let's do another one. This one will be slightly harder. We're going to get slightly harder. Example 1 was easy. This one says, sugar causes childhood obesity and diabetes. Okay. Some parents do not restrict the amount of sugar their children eat. Other parents restrict their children's sugar intake. So, what are the 2 sides here? Good. Para says eating versus not eating sugar. Or the Kashya says 2 types of parents. Arthur says those who restrict and those who don't. Good. Restriction on sugar. Nothing to do with calories. Somebody wrote something about calories. It's not to do with calories. It's about sugar. It's about parents who support sugar and parents who don't support sugar. Good. Yes. Eating sugar or not. Yes. But with regards to parents. Okay. Good. Cool. Yes. Parents, sugar consumption in children. Good. All right. So here are the 2 sides, the red and the blue. Some parents do not restrict. Other parents restrict. Okay. We found the 2 sides. In the red corner, we've got parents who do not restrict the amount of sugar their children eat, right? And in the blue corner, we've got parents who do restrict the amount of sugar their parents eat. That leads us to question 2. Which side are you on? Are you on the non-restricted side or are you on the restricted side? Let's have a look. Which side am I on? Because I need to reach a conclusion. Unrestricted sugar or restricted sugar? What do you think? Excellent. Oh, somebody's on non-restricted. That's fine. It's your opinion. You're allowed to have your opinion. It might just be hard to argue. That's all. But maybe you're maybe you've studied this in nutrition and you've got a good argument why kids should eat sugar. I don't know. Good. Looks like most people are on the restricted side. That's fine. So here we go. Here's the match. So I'm going to disagree with unrestricted sugar. So the parents who think their children should eat as much sugar as they want, I'm going to disagree with those. And I'm going to agree with the parents who believe in restricting their kids' sugar intake. Fine. So I'm going to go with other parents restricting. Okay, fine. Now I need to think about why. So come up with 1 reason why adults should restrict their children's sugar intake. Right into the chat. Health, fine. Obesity, health. Teeth, interesting. Teeth, obesity, health. Diabetes, obesity, health. Economics, that might be a difficult paragraph to write. I'm not sure. Discipline's an interesting one. Excellent. Cool. Here's mine. So I said, okay, so my introduction, I'm going to talk about how I think parents should restrict their sugar. Why? Because it's bad for kids' bodies. It's bad for their health. Okay, fine. Now I need to come up with my second paragraph. So I'm going to ask myself why. I need another distinct reason, not about health. I want something very separate so I can have very separate ideas in my paragraph. So come up with 1 more reason why adults should restrict their children's sugar intake. Rahul says prevent the habit of consuming more sugar. Yes, so teaching them good discipline. Excellent. Meager says that sugar's linked to hyperactivity. Excellent. So does Lewis. Well done. Addiction. They need a variety of nutrition. Arthur says discipline. Excellent. Baljit says hyperglycemia or high blood sugar. Fitness. Good. And Janet says children are immature to make decisions on food for themselves. Good. Excellent. There's your second paragraph. Here's mine. So in the introduction, I said I will agree with the parents who want to restrict their children's sugar intake because too much sugar is bad for a kid's body and too much sugar is also bad for a kid's mind. And I might use hyperactivity as my example. Okay, and in my conclusion, I will say that I support restricting sugar. Cool. Let's step it up. Let's do a more difficult one and we'll look at example 3. This one says, after school learning institutes or cram schools, so where you go after school to study more, offer additional tuition for students. Some people think that their children will get ahead by attending cram schools. Others think that cram schools are unnecessary and burdensome. Okay, this one's a little bit more complicated. So, what are the two sides here? You need to come up with this. Paresh, no, it's not about self-learning. It's not about additional tuition and self-learning. All right, cram schools. All right, I'm going to say no to a few of these because this is so important. Let me just stop you there. It's really important to know what the two sides are. Because if you do it incorrectly and you pull two sides apart and one of them isn't in fact a side, like if somebody said this question prompt is about self-study versus cram schools, no, it doesn't mention anything about self-study, okay? Nothing about that. And if you write an essay about self-study, the computer's going to mark you down because the question prompt did not ask you about self-study versus cram schools. Okay, so let me have a look here. There's one here that says different types of parents thinking. It's a bit too broad. We need to be more focused on the question prompt. Jugbeer says cram schools are a burden. Yeah, that's one side. What's the other side? Good. Sujaya, attending or not attending cram schools. Million says cram schools versus schools. Possibly. Cram schools versus avoiding cram schools. Two types of opinions from the people. Yes. This is where it gets complex. This is where language is a bit, frustrating because it's not mathematics. It's not clean. It's always messy. And so we need to think, all right, let's see what I wrote. I wrote, well, here they are here. Some people think that their children will get ahead by attending cram schools. Others think that cram schools are unnecessary and burdensome. So the two sides are attending cram schools or not attending cram schools. Okay, they are the two arguments. Now, with this one, which side are you on? Well, for me, cram schools versus no cram schools. I don't know. What do you think? I'll tell you what I think in a second. Okay, Arthur says both sides, and I agree with Arthur here. But I mean, you can write no cram schools, that's fine. You might have two good arguments to say that. Or you might think attending cram schools is good, so then you can argue for cram schools. Okay, or Pinoy wants to analyze both sides, and so does Gaurav. Me too, because I think about this and I think, well, cram schools can be bad, but they can be good. So now I'm going to have to come up with one argument for why they're good and one argument for why they're bad. And that's my essay when I'll have mixed paragraphs or one for paragraph, one against paragraph. But I think it's just easier to go with one opinion, okay? Agree or disagree. When you start to do the agree, disagree thing in the one essay, it gets a bit tricky. But anyway, let's look what I wrote. So here I was like, well, I can see the two sides, but I kind of agree with both. So why? come up with one reason. Let's follow my thinking and let's try to do a both one, okay? So let's first come up with one reason why cram schools are a good idea. Tanya says better activities. Nourish says it helps slow learners. Bella says it teaches discipline. Lewis says more job prospects. Good, more learning. Meega says extra support for weak students, more knowledge, more practice. It's good. So we can come up with one idea why cram schools are good. Fine. What I wrote was, well, let's look at my structure. In my introduction, I'm going to say cram schools can be both good and bad. So here's my good paragraph. They're good for struggling students, for example. But here, I'm going to move on to a paragraph where I say that they're not good. So why come up with one reason why cram schools are a bad idea? Somebody says wasting money, extra pressure, burdensome, they're costly, stress for the students, stressful, controversial, no time for other activities, unnecessary competition. Excellent ideas. So let me go back. There's an important thing here I want to talk about, or let me talk about it here. Okay, so for my against argument, I've said that it's bad for some students' mental health. Too much pressure, too much stress, maybe not enough sleep. You know, I can put that into my paragraph. It's important to understand that a paragraph is a single idea. Okay? So you'll notice that in my first paragraph, I've just said it's good for struggling students. And so that's the idea. That's my one idea, and then I'll expand that out with further information and examples, etc. If you're an e2language.com student, you know how to write paragraphs. What I won't do is mix different ideas into my one paragraph. That's bad. Don't do that. For example, here in my for argument, my for paragraph, I will not say it's good for struggling students. It's good because it helps them compete in the world. It's good because it will help them get job prospect. Too many ideas in the one paragraph. One idea, one paragraph, right? That's how you do that. And so my against one, I'm just going to talk about it's bad for some students' mental health. I can use examples and say, talk about stress and lack of sleep, for example, but my idea, my single idea is that it's bad for mental health. One paragraph, one idea. Now, let's look at this. In my introduction, I said cram schools can be both good and bad. For example, it can be good for struggling students who need to improve, but it can be bad for some students' mental health because they may not be able to go outside and play with their friends. But in your conclusion, if you do choose for a for and against essay like this one, in your conclusion, you have to come to a conclusion. You can't end the essay by saying, I think they're good and bad. The PTE asks you in the question prompt to make up your mind. So it's okay to say, listen, they're good and bad, but ultimately, I think they're good. Okay, although some students may suffer from mental health problems, ultimately cram schools are a good thing. Or ultimately, cram schools are bad. Okay, although they're good for struggling students, the effect they have on students' minds is bad. So overall, I think they're bad. So to recap this type of essay, when you go for both sides of the argument, in your conclusion, you must reach a conclusion. You must say yes or no, good or bad. You can't leave it as both, okay? We'll go to Q&A at the end if you have any questions. Right. Now, those three examples were easy, or a little bit easier than the actual PTE. Now I'm just going to give you, and I should also mention that the question prompts differ in the PTE. Okay, there's a question that says, to what extent do you agree or disagree? There's a question prompt that says, discuss the advantages or disadvantages. there's a question prompt that says, to what extent do you agree with this statement? But the same principles apply, okay? I want you to still apply these 4 questions to whatever question prompt you see. First thing you need to do is ask yourself, what are the 2 sides of the argument? Because I need to choose one. Then think, okay, which side am I on, red or blue? And then come up 1 reason why, 1 reason why, okay? 2 reasons why. So let me disappear. I want you to answer these 4 questions regarding this question prompt here. I'll give you 1 minute. Good, excellent, Milind. Got number 1. So which side are you on, Milind? Excellent, cool. Some people have answered all 4 questions and that was 1 minute, but I'll give you another 30 seconds because you're typing. In the actual PTE, you can scribble on your notebook what your opinion is. Cool. All right, excellent. I'm seeing some good responses. First of all, I'm seeing a lot of people get it right. The first question, what are the 2 sides? So the 2 sides are banning ultraviolent sports or allowing ultraviolent sports. Okay, now that you've got those 2 sides, banning them or allowing them. And keep in mind, it's not just sports. It's not violent sports, it's ultra-violent sports, okay? Like the UFC. It's not soccer, it's not cricket, it's not even rugby, which could be considered violent. It's ultra-violent. So do we ban them or do we allow them? So we've got our 2 sides of the argument. Excellent. Which side are you on? Well, probably the easiest one would be to say to ban them, and then you come up with your 2 reasons. Cool, so well done, that's good. Let's do another one. I'm going to disappear. This one's a bit more difficult. What are the 2 sides of this argument? Just answer question 1 first. Let's do this one. Good, Karanjit, yes. Before you agree, Asanka, I want you to find out what are the 2 sides. Good. Yes, yes, good, excellent. Cool. All right. That's probably enough time for that one. That one was a bit harder because it's a different type of question, but the same principles apply. So that's fine. Let's move on. I'll show you my answers at the end, by the way. I'll give you my opinions at the end. Let's move on to this one. This one says, machines are increasingly replacing human workers. Discuss the advantages or disadvantages of machines with regards to this statement. So what are the two sides? Yes, good, Amit. Yes, good. Yes, machines versus human labor. Machine labor versus human labor. That's a very good distinction. Cool. All right. That's probably enough time. Again, you can see how important these 4 questions are to start your writing. If you answer them, you know where you're going. Cool. Right. Let's move on to the final one. It says, this is the one we had yesterday. It's a bit harder. It says, when it comes to money, people care more about fairness and less about equality. Is a society where some people are extremely rich and some people are extremely poor fair? So what are the two sides of this argument? Good, Raghuvaran. Yes, Amit. Yes. Good, Belal. Yes. It's not rich versus poor. Yes, it's equality versus fairness, or fairness versus equality. Yes, with regards to money and wealth distribution. So which side are you on? Do you think it's okay, or do you think everyone should have the same amount of money? Do you think it should be equalized? Harinder's going for both sides. That's fine. So is Ratnapriya as well. Ratnapriya is going for both sides. Rajiv's going to argue for fairness. So is Maria. Good. That's fine. You've come up with your conclusion. You know where you're going. So that's great. So if you've chosen one of those sides or both, what's your first reason? If you've chosen fairness, for example, what's a reason why fairness should win? Or if you support equality, what's a reason why people should be equal financially? Good. Excellent. Yep. I'm seeing some very good arguments here. Cool. All right. That's fine. That was just a bit of an experiment so you could apply those 4 questions. It's up to you in the PTE whether you write down which side you choose and what are your 2 arguments. It's probably not a bad idea. I mean, if you've got the pen and your notebook in the PTE, just probably write down, you know, agree, reason 1 equals, you know, hard workers should be rewarded. Reason 2 equals lazy people should not be rewarded. Something like that. There you go. Then you can start writing your essay. You know where you're going. Cool. Right. Here's what I would do in that 1 minute preparation time. So this is the one about ultra-violent sports, such as UFC, are extremely polarizing, which means they separate people into 2 opinions. Some people believe they should be banned, while others think they actually others believe they should be allowed. So basically, ultra-violent sport or no ultra-violent sport, they are the 2 sides, as in allowing it or banning it. They're the 2 sides of the argument, right? So which side am I on? I don't really believe this, but it doesn't matter because in the PTE, I don't have enough time to really express my true opinion. The easiest thing for me to do is just to argue no ultra-violent sport. Why? Because I can come up with reasons a lot quicker in my mind than I can if I'm going to argue why violent sport is a good thing, okay? So I just choose this side. That's fine. Why? No ultra-violent sport? Because you can die. You can be, you know, beaten up and the risk of injury is extremely high. Fine. So I can write a paragraph about risk of injury or risk of death. Fine, I can do that very easily. I can write this paragraph. I can go and I can do it in 4 minutes. Cool. My other reason, no ultra-violent sport. Why? Because children might emulate it. Children might watch it on TV and then go outside and beat up all their friends. Or children might see it and then grow up and become violent in society. Fine. Is this true? Well, it's beside the point. I can easily write a good paragraph about this. Cool. This one was a bit harder. Overpopulation is the underlying cause of all the major global problems we face. Discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with this statement. What are the 2 sides? Well, that overpopulation causes all global problems, or overpopulation is not the cause of all global problems. Which side am I on? Well, I'm going to go for both because I think that overpopulation causes some global problems, and I think that overpopulation is not the cause of other global problems, right? I could, an easier thing for me to do would probably just to argue, yes, overpopulation is the cause of all global problems. But with this one, I feel pretty safe that I can make a good paragraph for and a good paragraph against. So I'll do it. So why? Overpopulation is not the cause of all global problems. For example, the economy, countries with bigger populations have better economies. So overpopulation is a good thing for the economy. Makes people richer, right? Or some people richer. So I can write a paragraph about that. But then I'm going to write an against one and say, okay, global warming, I'm going to write a paragraph how overpopulation causes global warming. It is caused by global warming. Is it true? Well, doesn't matter. I can write a good paragraph about that. Fine. Let's look at this one. This one said, machines are increasingly replacing human workers. Discuss the advantages or disadvantages of machines with regards to this statement. So what are the 2 sides? Well, it's the advantages of machines or the disadvantages of machines in the labor force with regards to working. We're not talking about having fast computers or something like that. We're talking about it with respect to, in the context of labor and working, machines and working, replacing other jobs, employment. Okay, so don't get sidetracked. Keep it specific, machines and employment. So they're the two sides. Or you could have said machines, labor versus human labor. They're the two sides. Machine labor versus human labor. That's fine. They are also the two sides. Let's say I'm going to go with disadvantages of machines. Why? Because recently I've been reading about how artificial intelligence is really quite scary. Fine. I'm going to talk about the disadvantages of machines in the labor force. What's my first argument? Well, I'm going to talk about unemployment. A lot of humans are going to become unemployed when machine learning increases and when they take their jobs. That's my first paragraph. Great. What's my other paragraph? I'm going to say the disadvantages, well, machines will eventually replace all jobs, not just factory work, for example, but eventually teachers, accountants, lawyers, doctors will be replaced by robots. And that's not good, because what will humans do? So I can write a good paragraph about that. Maybe you would do it in reverse. Maybe you would say, you know what, machines are great because it will replace factory workers, and your first paragraph will talk about how factory workers can then step up into better jobs in society. Fine. And you'll also say that as machines start replacing humans, humans can focus more on art and music and stuff like that. Fine. Whatever you can write a paragraph about, do that. Okay? It's not about what you really believe or what's true. It's about, can you have clear thinking about a paragraph and then write about it. Last one. When it comes to money, people care more about fairness and less about equality. Is a society where some people are extremely rich and some extremely poor fair? What are the two sides? Fairness and equality. Right. Which side am I on? I'm going to argue both. I'm going to argue one paragraph about fairness, one paragraph about equality. What's my fairness paragraph? Well, I'm going to say societies need to be fair and they need to reward hard work. If you work hard, you should earn more than lazy people, for example. Yeah, I can write a paragraph about that. That's easy. What about my equality argument? Well, I'm going to say, you know what, that's fine, but the super rich billionaires, for example, must be philanthropic. They must give to charities, okay, or they must give to the poor. So there are my two arguments, fairness and equality. I'm going to write one paragraph about fairness. If you work hard, you should be rewarded. I'm going to write one paragraph about equality. The super rich, the billionaires in the world should be philanthropic. Now, in my conclusion, if you remember, if I do a for and against, in my conclusion, I have to choose one. So I will, in the end, I'll say, I'm going to go with fairness. For example, in the conclusion, I'll say, although billionaires should give to charities, for example, in the end, fairness should govern society so that people are inspired to work, so they can be rewarded, something like that. Cool? Cool. Right, let's recap what we've learned in this lesson. Basically, we learned that there's 20 minutes for write essay. You should spend 18 minutes writing. You should spend 1 minute checking your work, but you should spend 1 minute preparing in your mind or on your notebook. You need to look at the question prompt and understand what are the two sides of the argument. You then need to choose a side. Which side are you on? You then need to give a reason why. You need to give another reason why. You need to write an introduction, 2 paragraphs, and a conclusion. Your conclusion should match your introduction and your paragraphs. If you're an e2language.com student, you know exactly how to write that essay, okay? Ultimately, what you want to do when you write your essay is come to a conclusion. Okay? So right at the beginning of the essay, you need to think to yourself, what's my conclusion? What's my opinion on this thing? Because if you have a destination, it will be easier to get there. If you don't have a destination, it's like being in your car and you're just driving around and you're going zigzagging all around the city and you don't really know where you're going. Your paragraphs will be messy, that won't have a good structure. But if you say, okay, I'm going there, and you go there and you follow your thoughts, because what happens is you have the thought, right? You have the thought, the language will follow the thought. The thought comes first, then the language. If you're just typing language without much thought, it's messy. Thought first, then language. You're going to have a much better structured essay. Cool. Right, let's go to Q&A. Let's go to Q&A. Let me just move me. Maria says, how many write essays do we get in the PTE? Well, there's a possibility. There are 3 possible combinations. In the first 2 combinations, you'll have to write 1 essay. In the third combination, if you're unlucky, you have to write 2 essays. Ashu, can we suggest in the conclusion? No, you're just concluding what you think in the conclusion. You're recapping what you said in your paragraphs and you're coming to a final conclusion. That's it. Elton, could you please give a few examples for a conclusion? This essay discussed the reasons why fairness and equality should coexist in society. Despite this, overall, a society should be governed by fairness so that workers will be inspired. That's my conclusion. There you go. It should be 2 sentences. Tarundeep. When we agree with both sides in the conclusion, we need to mention both. Yes, you need to mention both, but then your final sentence says, you've mentioned both, but then your final sentence says, despite A, I believe in B. Or despite the red team, I'm going with the blue team. Cool? Yes. Yes. Mihal, good question. Mihal says, how is write essay evaluated? Does the computer evaluate you based on which side you choose? No. 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 The computer doesn't care about your opinion. The computer cares about your language and your structure. Okay, even if it was the one about children smoking cigarettes and you argued for children smoking cigarettes, it's fine. It doesn't matter. The computer doesn't care about your opinion. The computer cares about your structure. Okay, so that's fine. So I think just choose the easiest opinion. Whatever comes to your mind first. There's not enough time. You don't have 2 weeks to write this essay. If you had 2 weeks, it would be great. You can explore different ideas and you could come to your conclusion. But in this, just whatever pops into your mind first, okay? Cool. Yes, Sheer, that looks like a fine conclusion. That's fine. Prince got 86 in writing. That's pretty good. I'm not sure why. Okay, Bella says, do you have any suggestion for the word count that we need to write on each part? Well, you need to write between 200 and 300 words, right? So let me just do a little bit of mathematics. So, 50 to 60 words per paragraph, fine. Okay, Jagath says, does a person review the essay or just the computer? The computer. I think if you want to challenge your results, then they send it to a person to regrade. Tarundeep says, do we need to use super fancy words in the essay? Do we need to use like vocabulary, articulate vocabulary? Tarundeep, you should try to be articulate in the essay. You should try to use vocabulary that's sophisticated, but only if you understand it completely. Don't use words that you don't understand because you risk getting it wrong. Tina says, can we use an exclamation mark to express feelings? No, it's an academic essay. Karanjit, can we use quotes in the essay? I would say no, because the computer is, how the PTE computer is programmed is, it's called latent semantic analysis. What it is it searches, say the topic is global warming. How they program the computer is they get the computer to read every article ever written on global warming, right? Or like thousands and thousands of arguments on global warming. So whatever you're typing in, the computer's matching that with a big database of other people's answers. Not just PTE takers, but proper academic papers, for example. So if you use quotes and you say, you know, whatever, Gandhi said that, blah, 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 it's not going to match. It's not going to match. So don't use quotes. I think you're better off to say something like, a recent study has shown that 23% of people don't believe in global warming, something like that. That's fine. But if you're going to use a person's name, for example, that may not have been picked up by the computer, it's problematic. Paras says, Jay, are all the essay questions argumentative? Yes, except for one, which is different, but you can, yeah, that's fine. Yes. Yes, Natalia, prepositions are counted in the word count. Pinoy's got a good question. Can we use idiomatic expressions? It says in the score guide that you should use idiomatic expressions, but it's not talking about raining cats and dogs. It's not talking about, you know, breaking a leg, or it's talking about academic idiomatic expressions like is based on, or according to, or with regards to. So use that. Don't use proverbs. Don't use everyday idioms. Okay, Ujwal's got a good question. How do we approach to what extent do you agree or disagree question? Because that's sort of not asking you whether you agree or disagree. It's asking how much you agree or disagree. So you can say there that you completely agree, or you completely disagree, or you partially agree, or you agree for the following reasons. But that's fine. Yes, keep that in mind though. All right, if you're worried about structure, if you're thinking about structure, I do recommend, if you're a free user, I do recommend that you sign up to e2language.com to get the essay structure that we teach, because it will help you enormously. The preparing thing is just part of it. A huge part of PTE Write Essay is having a structure memorized in your head. So when you go into that exam, you know exactly how to write the introduction, you know exactly how to write both paragraphs, and you know exactly how to write the conclusion. And there is a structure that you can use that is flexible, answers the question, gets you a high written discourse mark, and will improve your overall writing score. Cool. All right, I better go. Sorry if I didn't answer your question, but yes, there are hundreds and hundreds of questions. If you have any particular questions, or if you're interested in signing up, feel free to email hello@e2language.com. Paid users, I will see you in approximately 3.5 hours, 2.5 hours for the paid live mock test on speaking. So I'll see you then. I hope that you found that helpful. Cool bananas. See you guys.